Tatiana Rivera is a supervisor at her department, previously having served as a police dispatcher as well. She also serves as an instructor for the American Emergency Preparedness, teaching classes. We have asked her on today to discuss the difference between critical and tactical dispatching. This is Lifeline. Well, Tatiana, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate having you on.
Thank you for guys for having me on again.
Yes, I'm excited to learn about this. I don't know what the heck what tactical versus critical dispatching is, so uh, inform me.
Well, honestly, the first thing I'm gonna make you think about is I'm gonna challenge the thought process of what it means to be a tactical dispatcher. Often we refer to tactical dispatching as having a separate team for any communication center on site at whatever the incident may be occurring. And while that is a tactical dispatching setup, similar to FEMA, how we've been having the floods or, massive active shooters and things of that nature, and even TERT acts in that way as well, which is the Telecommunicator Emergency Response Task Force. Tactical dispatching is an everyday thing. And so that's where I want to kind of change people's mindsets a little bit. Is like, as an everyday dispatcher working in a center, you are already given these skills. It's just a matter of eventually when it gets to the critical point, can you push your skills or take on extra learning opportunities to enhance those to then take it out to the field should you be needed.
So hold on. I'm going to be that person that's listening saying, excuse me, what about all these classes that I won't name some of the four letter places out there that teach all these tactical? They have me thinking, and anybody else that's listening, we think that there's this dispatcher that puts on a special headset with a special, outfit, cape, everything. The keyboard's different, the mouse is different, and I don't know. They like put on a suit to go do this. You're telling me that's not the case?
So in some instances, it can be, but the overall every day to day, you're already tactical dispatching. So when talking about instances of that nature, you're talking about the TERT deployments, like how Uvalde was, correct? Like when you're
Yeah.
bringing in any available hands to just come in and help and have those bodies there to help assess and mitigate everything that's going on, right? And so in that sense, yes, you are thrown into a new setup, right? You don't know who you're working with. You're having to figure out, the verbiage and the communication styles between other agencies and things of that nature. But all that represents is the FEMA ICS styles that we have already been teaching and we already learn on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's just as a typical dispatcher on the normal day to day, we are already tactical dispatching with how we are handling our units, how we are processing calls, how we're giving information, and even notating that information, which all of that is the basis of tactical dispatching. When we, the biggest difference that I want to make sure people understand is that when you think about a tactical dispatcher and the specialty courses from these four-letter agencies, um, those are set up in a way so that you are learning to process the differences of the other agencies you'll be working with because now you're going into a mutual aid setup, which
Okay.
requires that coordination effort. What on the day to day, even though you're usually working with fire, EMS, police, even a local school agency, whatever that might be, you're already doing a coordinated effort. It's just on a smaller scale, but you're still tactical dispatching.
Okay,
So
so
go
go
ahead.
ahead, Erica.
'Cause let me
Okay,
let me
so,
work mine out. You go ahead.
okay, so the tactical dispatching is really more just dispatching. Like it's something that you're not a mode you're going into. It's just part of what the job is. So you should think about it like that's something I do every day. It's not, uh, a new thing. It's part of the daily tasks as a dispatcher.
Correct. You are already providing communications. You're already providing organization to all the information and the data. You're already helping maintain unit and public safety while mitigating whatever situation it may be. And so we tend to think of tactical dispatching as those really, really high risk, low frequency incidents where, just like I said, like, active shooters or the flooding incidents of that nature. And while in a sense, Those are an extension of that. You're using your same daily basic skills to
Mhm.
bring that to the table and making those efforts worthwhile.
Okay.
Huh. Okay. Okay. There was a word that you said that's sticking in my mind, and it was coordinated, which if I'm taking the sensationalism out of it, that's every day.
Mhm.
We coordinate every day. That is literally the dispatcher's job. Is you coordinate a response to a request for service. And in some
Correct.
agencies, it might be in some agencies it might have it might require a little more coordination because now you're talking about police and fire and EMS, like especially like in a smaller PSAP where their
Hmm.
disciplines are all three, and there might be a call that requires all three. So every skill set that they have, they're employing in that moment. So would you
Correct.
say that's critical also, or is there a difference?
So there is a slight difference, and the way that I want to kind of frame the difference for you is think about a regular SWAT call, right? Think about like a barricaded subject or a hostage call that any agency can have, right? How did that call start out initially? It started out as a disturbance. It started out as a traffic stop or a welfare check, right? It didn't start off as this big event all of a sudden. It had to build from somewhere. And the basic skills were already there from the beginning of, okay, here I got this call, I have this disturbance, or I have this welfare check. Let me go and get my officers on it or my units on it, whether it be police, fire, or EMS, get them onto the call. I'm already looking for information. Can I provide them any additional information? Going back. So in those sense, you're already still doing everything while still notating everything that's coming across the radio to you. And those are all the same. It's just at one point when you stop going from giving new updated information to becoming a scribe more so. And then with bigger events like that Turt handled in Uvalde, you're then being physically pulled out from your original dispatch center on an individual basis to then work with other agencies. So those are the bigger differences. So like when you're talking about your everyday tactical dispatching, you're already doing it. Your officers, medics, and your fire are already doing it. How do they approach a scene? How do they look at this call? How do they look at the information that's being given to them that you're providing? Right? Those are already tactical mindsets that we have in place, but we don't there tends to be a downplay of that because of the fact that it's our everyday. The monotony of it has become so normal and that we don't think that our normal everyday skills can really go into play of, oh, all of a sudden now I have an active shooter, or all of a sudden now I have this major barricaded subject with a couple hostages, or whatever it might be. But how you handle that and how the change of the escalation is what takes it from a normal tactical day to a critical day.
I like that. I like that. That makes sense. So I know you said all of that, but if you are I'm going to back up because there's another word in there that I'm not sure everybody realizes. Scribe.
Mhm.
What do you mean?
So you're note taking, right? That's the basic premise of a scribe. But as call takers and dispatchers for any agency, what are we doing? We're note taking what our callers' information that they're giving us. We
Hmm.
are note taking what the officers and the fire and EMS are giving us to maintain the timelines and the complexities of the calls as they build up. And so that's what I mean by scribe.
Interesting.
So, would you say that there's any particular point where you move from uh, sort of the tactical to the critical dispatching? Is there like a hard and fast line anywhere, or is it sort of the more ephemeral kind of like, oh, we've moved into critical state here?
I think it's more ephemeral. I think it's just because at some point you move into a critical state. The only reason I think some people think that there's a hard and fast line is because many agencies have started to create separate teams based off of time frame with departments and skill sets that make it seem like it's more involved than what it might actually be on the day to day.
Okay.
So I guess my
So,
question is, go ahead.
I was going to say, so it's kind of you have to play it by ear what the needs of the situation are. Does this need um, like a bunch of resources, which would kind of denote to me, okay, this is turning into a critical incident, as opposed to just I need to make sure that I'm following my A, B, and C's and dotting my I's and crossing my T's to scribe well and to tactically dispatch.
Yeah, and I think actually going back to your point of is there a fine line? I don't think that there is a fine line, but one hint that a call could be becoming more critical is when you start to request specialized teams.
Hmm.
So you start to request like SWAT teams or CAS teams or, and additional agencies to come and assist. That kind of changes the call a little bit because now you're building up the momentum a little bit more and having more bodies on scene that are now going to be requiring more information and more, or at least more clarity of what's going on. And then the timeline and the like, who's in charge and who's doing this, like those things make it more critical. But on the day to day, you're already doing that.
So when you say like I know, when you say cast, I know what that is.
Hmm.
But not everybody would hear that and be like, surely she's not talking about the thing that I put on the limb when it's going. What
No,
what do you
no.
mean by that? And like I guess the question would be a for us, and obviously cast doesn't mean necessarily the same thing. There might be a different, acronym for a different agency. They may use something else, may call it something else for you. What is it? And then if I'm that dispatcher that doesn't know what that is, in my head, I'm convinced that that makes me tactical or not. Is that so?
Okay, so yeah, so when I talk about teams like CAS, so for the agency that I'm currently with, it's Counter Assault Strike Team, and so alongside other teams like RTF, which is a Rescue Task Force, you have your SWAT teams. Those specialty teams are trained in a way, or they're regular everyday officers. They just have a little bit more of extensive training to deal with certain types of events, whether it be crowd control or a pop off of an active shooter downtown. So they might have medical training on top of their normal patrol work or whatever. So it's a matter of really understanding, many agencies may not even have those teams, or they may not know that their officers are trained in that because they might go be training with a different agency and then bringing back that knowledge. Um, but it's a matter of understanding what tools do you have at your disposal to help you maintain the call that's now building up.
So you talk a lot about this, I guess, from sort of a dispatch perspective. Would there be any difference for call takers, like the critical like call taking versus your sort of tactical? Because if you're like processing incoming 911 calls, you want to scribe very well. But
Right.
is there any sort of a different sort of take that you would have when a call becomes a critical call? Like if you get a like an active shooter or something like that.
I think that a lot of that has to do with being vigilant, right? You're needing to watch your screens and watching the calls that are coming in because it's very easy to get caught up in, oh, I just got another call. Let me just process this and move on. But if you see that there's a lot of calls coming in from the same area that are starting to have similar information, can you quickly figure out or start asking the questions that might help bring more information to a call that may not have already been there? Right. So somebody may not have a timeline or may not have had a good subject description, or where exactly the location is at. You might have a roundabout location. Are we able as a call taker to continue to ask those questions and be a little bit more inquisitory in our line of questioning to
Hmm.
help get that information. And that's all about being vigilant and watching what's coming into you. You're going to see that there might be a pickup of calls. You might be holding calls now because of an event that's happening. You could start hearing people saying the same location, next to you. And especially if you're working in a smaller agency, you kind of already know what your partner is working on. And so being vigilant and knowing what's going on around you to help maintain that control of what we have. And as a call taker, just like with dispatch, or on both sides on the radio or of the phones, it's going to be the fact of maintaining that calm presence, maintaining a, a level head as best you can in the fact that the situation is now escalating. And those are things that we try and teach everybody every day as it is anyway. You never know when a call is just going to be, oh, this guy I have an EPO on him and he's been following me. But then all of a sudden now he's hitting me, he's doing whatever. That's an escalation, but that's a normal everyday escalation that we don't think about becoming now a critical situation. Because then that
Yes.
could become all of a sudden like he drags her into the apartment, locks her in, takes her phone away. You know, how does that affect the calls and how does that, you know, move forward and build up?
Right.
And I guess
That's what.
you're really right. The more, and as you're describing this, and I'm thinking about it, I mean, I can name several calls
Excuse
probably
me.
this week that
Mhm.
had, that started off as this is a call that that if we're not careful, complacency could have us thinking, meh, same call, same, I've taken this call 100 times. But if we stay, like you said, diligent or vigilant, doing our basics and fundamentals, not
Mhm.
having a specialized title of a tactical dispatcher, which I know we're challenging the thinking. It's absolutely true. Doesn't really exist. But if you're doing your ABCs, your basics and fundamentals, the chances are you're not going to miss much.
Correct. And the reason why is because you already know what you're doing. You've already been trained to do this, right? Every call starts out the same way. If, on the call taking side, if you happen to just be focusing on that, you're getting the 911 call, you're asking police, fire, EMS, whatever you know, services they need. You start asking for the address and what's going on, subject information. None of that changes ever. It's now just a matter of once it starts to go critical, if you see something starting to build up, is there additional questions you can start thinking of that some agencies are stuck to a pro QA, which is perfectly fine and gets them where they need to get. But sometimes the out of line questioning assists us into being able to get the additional information. And so it's the escalation dictates the different responses that we have. And even then, it's really a situation that goes off the charts from the beginning. There's always going to be that buildup.
So I know several of our newest of the new dispatchers. I'm sorry, Gary. There might have
Go
been a
ahead.
little bit of a delay, so I didn't realize. So I'm thinking about our baby call takers and our baby dispatchers, people who have only been in the business, 6 months, a year, maybe even two, because
Right.
compared to some of us who have 10 plus years of experience, they are still considered um, new to the field, new to the industry, new to the profession.
Mhm.
I'm I'm imagining them saying, okay, but how do I prepare for these types of calls? Because all I've ever heard was, tactical this and tactical that. Am I really ready? Tatiana, you're trying to tell me that I've only been on the job about a year. And if one of these calls comes in, I'm already ready to handle it when everybody around me is giving me the impression that I'm not.
So that's the thing, right? You are unfortunately we're going to run into the situations where people are doubting their skills or doubting their mindsets. You are never alone when you're working a call. You're never alone when you're working, most times when you're working a center, even if you had to call somebody to come in and help you out. You're never without the skill. You already were trained with your basics of how to handle every single call that comes in. At that point, when you start to question yourself, is there someone that I can rely on that might help answer my questions? Is there policies and procedures in place that I may not have thought of initially because I wasn't on my day-to-day, mundane calls that I can refer to? Your main focus is always going to be to handle the call, taking care of the units and the tasks, and then updating everybody that needs to be aware. It's getting yourself out of that mindset of, I don't know how to do this, I've never done this. Well, at some point you're going to have to. And so knowing who you can reach out to and what options and like again, policies and procedures and tools that are at your disposal are what's going to help you be prepared for that. And if something comes up and you really feel like this is totally out of your hands, be vocal. This is something that we have to make sure that every dispatcher, no matter how long that they've been in, if they feel like this is that there's a call or a situation, whether it be a mental or a mental block rate because maybe this call is too close to home for them and they just can't handle it, or maybe this is something that they've never attacked before because okay, now like SWAT calls in general. We've got our my agency gets SWAT calls all the time, so it's like how do we throw somebody into new with that? Is there someone that I can send down and walk them through it and just remind them to breathe through, and it's like, okay, this is all you're doing. This is what you're trying to get the information from. Knowing where you can reach out for that assistance, it's like checking in that manner will only help you. It's not going to hurt you.
When I used to do more training, I used to be a trainer and then the training coordinator. I would often tell, people, especially that were doing dispatching, that it's kind of like spinning a plate. Like, you have, a stick that you spin the plate on. I don't know if kids still do that these days. Maybe not. But when
Maybe
you just,
virtually.
yeah, but when you just have one plate, it's easy to kind of keep it there, and you're spinning it so it's moving fast enough it doesn't fall off. And then you can have two plates, and you kind of do that, and three and four. But when you get up to like 5 and 6 plates, and you're like, I need some
Mhm.
help. And
Yeah.
the same way with the call, you're doing the same thing. You're spinning a plate. You're scribing the call. You're sending help. Getting additional help. It's just more and more of it kind of starts to happen as the event becomes more critical. And
Yeah.
so if you're doubting yourself, just know that if you can spin one plate, you can spin 10.
Correct.
Sure.
And the biggest thing with that is thinking about your tasks, right? Like, how do I prioritize my tasks? How do I maintain what I've already been doing so that I'm still level headed? Because unfortunately, whether it be on the call taking or the dispatching side, the moment that we start to lose our cool, so does the other party. And so it is something that you need to check in with yourself consistently and being aware of where are your limits and can I test my limits? Am I willing to test my limits? Because sometimes people really aren't. And then we need to question like, okay, do I need to necessarily take that person off this call and switch it to someone else? What are my options to do that if that's the case? But we want to give everybody the opportunity to make sure that they can test their skills and know that they can do this because a call, an everyday call that you're already doing tactics on, that because just because we don't think about it that way, you already are. An everyday call it can turn critical at any moment. And just because it turns critical does not mean it requires a tactical dispatcher to go to scene to handle that call. And in many instances, many agencies don't even have the bodies to be able to do that. And
No.
so having your dispatchers understand that they have what they need in front of them to work with the buildup of these calls is most important.
That was incredibly well said because at the end of the day, you're right. Even an agency the size of ours, when stuff goes sideways, we don't say, hey, you pick up everything, run out to your car, and go to the scene and set up. Or we don't deploy a special, typically, we don't deploy a command post vehicle
Correct.
completely equipped with a dispatch station and all the
Mhm.
things. We have to go into we have to go into tactical mode or critical mode in the blink of an eye. We go
Correct.
from, oh snap, this is not what we thought. Okay. And we all employ something that I think that we all have, which is the ability to think critically. And
Mhm.
that's all that's happening when these things start to go. Yes, we all do, Gary, in this profession. We absolutely do. Some of us, it's like a muscle, right? Some of us have used that critical thinking muscle more often than others, and so it's well developed. Whereas someone that is newer to the field, they've used it just not as frequently as we have, and so therefore they don't necessarily have muscle memory, or therefore the and as a result, the confidence to
Correct.
say, I don't even know what this is, but I'm going to use what I have and let's dance. And that's
So
ultimately what we're doing.
to build off of that a little bit, right? Earlier we were talking about how an everyday call builds, correct? So think about we're looking for a subject that took off on foot, right? Foot pursuit. But all of a sudden we're having to build a perimeter. What is a perimeter in itself? A perimeter in itself is a tactical move to just close off the area to then try and locate a subject. Our
Hmm.
officers are already doing that. What are we doing? Either sometimes we might be helping coordinate what areas might still need to be blocked off, but ultimately we're just typing in, we're locating and reorganizing where the officers are at. Same thing, a crash, right? You might have a one or two vehicle crash, which is an everyday thing. Again, we don't think about that being anything different, but tactically you're thinking about it. Okay, is it on the highway? Is it road or is it on a side street, right? Do I have to block off anything? But then what happens if that 2 to 3 vehicle crash now becomes a 5, 10 car pileup? Again, those aren't calls that we think about being tactically or as a tactical dispatcher mode. You're already handling them, but they've now become critical. And so now, because you're dealing with more individuals that may be injured, and you need more bodies to respond on scene, more agencies to help assist, police, fire, EMS, another agency might helping to block, whether that be an ISD or the state troopers or whoever you have available.
Mm-hmm.
Those might be things. Are you now having to call, your local energy department because that crash hit a light pole? Like, those are all things that you are coordinating to try and get together and get the information for to help lower the risk of that call. So yes, it became two car collision all of a sudden to 5 or 10 cars. So yes, that became a critical call all of a sudden. But you're using the same tactics both ways. Now it's just like, okay, now I have more going on here because I'm requiring extra special resources to handle this.
Well said. Well said. Where do you think that go ahead, Gary.
I was just saying, and it doesn't always necessarily have to be a criminal matter or something. When we had you on last, you spoke about a critical incident that wasn't a call at all. For our longtime listeners, we had Tatiana on earlier to discuss the CrowdStrike meltdown that occurred, where all the computers kind of bricked, which is not great. And so you have to immediately go into critical mode. How do I solve this situation? And you've got to do that from every aspect, from those taking the 911 calls, those dispatching them, and even like the supervisory staff and your leadership staff had to kind of kick in. And how can we get through this situation?
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to. It doesn't even have to be a 911. It could be that your center went down, you lost power, you are flooding, whatever. You had to relocate because of something. How do you handle those situations? And that is a great example of showing that it's not just on the dispatcher level, but it goes to all levels of management within a center to help make sure that things are taken care of. Which is why you look for the people that might have extra knowledge to help you if you're brand new to a call, or you look to the policies and procedures that have been written, even though they may not be entirely black and white, point for point for this specific incident. You might be able to pull things from another one. It was written for a reason. Mm-hmm. And so it's there to help you have the tool in place.
Mm-hmm. And Erica, you'd made a point about, some people have used their metaphorical muscles more often for critical thinking. And to continue the metaphor, it doesn't matter if you're lifting a barbell or half a slab of meat. You're using the muscle to lift. So what that means, to explain that metaphor, because everybody's scratching their head, is that the situations can be different. So it could be a barricaded subject. It could be all the computers have gone down. It could be a severe weather event. But whatever you're having to lift in this metaphor, that's almost done, you're going to use the same muscles to kind of make these decisions to get through it.
You're totally right, Gary. You're totally right.
That was a long way around.
You're having to then, and Erica, you know this just as well as I do, but what do we always say with AEP, right? Repetition builds skill, skill builds confidence, confidence builds resilience, right? The more you start to take on these types of calls, the easier that it'll be to then take on another call or to reframe your thought process on how the call is. Because again, every call comes in the same. It's just how do we push forward with it, right? Even something simple as traffic control for a construction site, or even traffic control for a concert, right? We don't, on the day-to-day, we're like, oh, it's okay. They're good on their own. They're not doing much of anything. They're just standing out there. But at any point, could that turn into something more critical? And all you're doing when it becomes critical is now you're evaluating the information. How dynamic has it become? Where has the danger level gone to? Are you now having to make decisions that are not on the normal day-to-day tasks, understanding, do we need a specialized team? Do we need other, city resources? And then maintaining that documentation to a T as best you can. But again, you're already doing that on the day to day. Now it's just heightened.
I like that. That's well said. Where do you, and I know we're probably winding down on time, but and then this question actually is for, yes, for you, but Gary, you can chime in too, because I think we all experienced this or have known someone who has. Where do you think the insecurity or the mindset that I'm not ready for tactical comes from? Where do you think that that was a conscious thing, or you think it just developed over time in our industry? Because I mean, it's embedded, it's entrenched. The tactical, as if there's some difference between what you do every day and the heightened, the heightened, the stakes becoming higher on a call. Where did that come from? Because I don't even, I can honestly say, I don't remember where I learned tactical. I don't even know where I got that from. Does anybody remember?
I honestly think it's just something that's happened over time, right? There was a time with, especially in policing, where the everyday wasn't something that, many people had to fear. It was a normal traffic stop. It was a disturbance. It was something, of those natures. And um, more often than not, many more people were coming home. But as, generations have come in and mindsets have changed and the political atmospheres have changed, that has caused different events to then occur, like all the active shooters at schools, we've had those situations, even in Austin, we've had, the bomber, and, that's not something we ever would have thought would have come to our city.
Wow.
Even at a festival, at South by Southwest, we had someone run their vehicle through a barricade. Those
Yeah.
little things, and it's all about, because, and I think that society as a whole has allowed those specific types of events to stand out so much that they felt that tactical had to become its own thing, even though we are already implementing those skills day to day. It's research management, it's collaboration, and it's documentation and communication. Those are the four things that stick with that no matter what you're doing at any point in time. And so just because, even with Mandalay Bay, those things have really, those are drastic events and they're extremely critical, right? Those are events that no one ever wants to have to deal with. But the basis has always stayed the same in all those calls. Officers don't change their mindset when they're going into those calls. Medics don't change their mindsets when they go into those calls. Neither does fire. Why is it that all of a sudden a tactical dispatcher now has to have a different mindset than what we do on the regular? They shouldn't. Now, does it help to have additional classes that help kind of, if an active shooter comes up, you kind of know what to ask, or how to kind of corral people in a little bit more? Yes, those help, but not every agency has access to them. And so our day to day is tactical. It's now, how do we handle the critical calls that come in?
Beautifully said. Well
Yes.
said. I got
So
nothing.
you got nothing. Well, so essentially,
Well,
if I
until I
could
think of the
boil,
next thing. Yeah.
Something will come
if
up.
if I could boil down the lesson into a few sentences, when you're talking about tactical versus critical dispatching, it's tactical is something you do all the time. Critical is just more tactically, because there's more elements involved, but it's still all the same basic principles that you're following.
Yes,
And
correct. There's a little bit more of I need to snap in and get ready to handle this kind of thing with critical calls, whereas we've already gotten into this kind of this level line of, oh, I'm coming into work, I'm going to handle these calls, I'm going to go home. But at any point can those calls go from just here and the regular monotony of the day to day to, oh crap, now I have something else I really need to handle and figure out. And how do I do that? And again, you all the tools are at your disposal. All the knowledge is there. It's how are you confident? Can you, and not necessarily confident, but are you cognizant enough in yourself to can I look for this information? Can I reach out to someone? Can I do I how do I apply the skills I already have to keep up with the speed of it? And that's what I'm
I,
saying.
I
Like the
remember.
four big things are your communication's already there.
Yeah.
That's something we do every day. Your documentation's already there. That's something we do already every day. Collaboration with other agencies, police, fire, EMS, ISD, state troopers, those kinds of things. And if you have to go to another city to get resources, something that, you notify someone else to try and help, that doesn't necessarily need to stay on your lap, which is again prioritizing your tasks, but then also all that resource management. And you're already doing that. You do that all day, every day. How do I get a record for this tow? How do I get EMS to the scene? How do I need more officers? Okay, how do I get more officers out here? We already do that.
Every day. You're right. And I would say, because I know we were talking in preparation for, we knew this conversation was going to happen, and I feel like you mentioned something to me about if you're the one or two seat PSAP, right, where you might be that person that is you're alone in your PSAP, and you are a
Mhm.
primary PSAP, not a secondary, and
Correct.
you are wondering, how would I manage something critical like that if it's just me? And I feel like you said, correct me if I'm wrong, when it hasn't happened yet is the time to start prepping for the possibility.
Correct. Correct. And those are things, right, that any agency is able to do. If you've never had to deal with any of those, right, in any situation, whether it be a state fair and all of a sudden something pops up at the state fair, you've never had a situation like that. Work through it the best you can as an agency and as an individual with the skills that you have, and then go back and do an after action report. What can we do? What is it in this that happened in this event that we can look at that can help make us better? Is there something that we can do? And then try and bring that back in. And as an agency, I think that's something that any agency really is responsible for their employees, is to help make sure that those things can be reassessed and grown within, so that no one stays stagnant in their skills and their knowledge, because this can happen anywhere, anytime, to anyone.
Yeah.
And so knowing how to be able to respond to that. And then if you really are fish out of water and you have no idea how to handle something, is there a phone tree you can go to call somebody and be like, hey, like I need you in here now, walk through on this, like what is there someone you can reach out to? Because again, the tools are already there. You just have to be able to get yourself to a place to where you can use them and understand that, which is why that mental check-in is so important. Because if you can't calm yourself down enough to handle an escalating situation, then that's going to be an issue when the call starts to continue to build.
Wow. I just have to throw it out there because I can't help myself. You have a webinar coming up at some point, don't you, on this subject?
I do with AEP. So it's something that's been in the works. It's a smaller webinar of the larger class that we have going on.
Yeah.
But it is to touch base on this and the fact that, again, like I said at the beginning, I want to, you know, challenge that mindset, because I've spoken with other people from other agencies. They're like, oh yeah, well, we just can't afford a tactical dispatcher. Why should you have to? Why should if your facility cannot, because you're a 1 or 2 person PSAP, if your facility cannot work that out, then there has to be another plan in place, and that you can try and figure out and work through, which is why assessing events you've never had before is so important. Going back and reviewing them and getting, okay, we did this, we could have done this better. We didn't do this, but we needed this instead, kind of thing. Those
And
are all
not
important
being
things to
afraid.
review.
And not being afraid to critique yourself or after action yourself. AARs they are not a time to point fingers. They are a time to assess what happened, our response to what happened, and how can we do better? What went incredibly well, better than we could have imagined, and what do we absolutely have to work on and we cannot allow to
Correct.
happen again? And I don't think any agency is immune to that.
No, and I think that, to your earlier point of how do you kind of kick off that confidence, or how do we even get to this point of I'm not a tactical dispatcher, I think that also goes into when you're checking in with yourself and reassessing yourself. I don't care if you're a 1-year dispatcher, if you're 25-year dispatcher. There's something new to learn every single day, every single call, every single task. So those dispatchers that might be talking smack because, oh, this 1-year dispatcher is now working this call, I'm gonna need them to stop because you're gonna be the person that they're gonna look for and be like, hey, I need help. And I need you to check your ego so that you can all be on the same team, because that's what we are. It doesn't matter if we're police, fire, EMS, day shift, night shift, whatever. We are all on the same team trying to get the same public safety out. And that's why the tactical dispatching team, when it's necessary for big events, obviously Mandalay Bay, Uvalde, how we have Kerrville flooding and stuff like that, those are completely different. In the sense that, yes, you're being sent to scene, and yes, it's a tactical dispatching, but you're working off of somebody else's setup. You're no longer working off of your agency setup. How does your agency handle these calls? That's where the question now comes into play, because again, those 1-2 person PSAPs can't rely on sending someone to scene. They can't rely on warm transfers of information. They have to be able to get the work done in that moment. And then if it starts to slow down, because like example, like a flooding event, if it starts to slow down and you have time to kind of reassess and see if you can send somebody, that's different. But your tactical dispatching is every single day, every moment of everything that you are already doing. And then it's just like, okay, now this went critical. How do I take my current skills and match it to the critical level?
Oh,
that's it.
Yes.
So if people wanted to kind of find you in terms of trying to set up some of this training, aside from calling 911, what would be a good way to kind of reach you? That's a joke. Don't call 911, by the way.
Yeah, let's not call 911 just for a class setup. American Emergency Preparedness actually has a website. It's ameri-prep.com, and you can click on there to see all the types of workshops that we host. We can do them in person. Webinars are actually very great and a lot easier places because of the multiple shifts and the hours, and those hours for webinars are very flexible. And so you can always look there to see as far as like what we have coming up next and the availability of those classes.
Okay.
And actually, if you don't see what you need there, they'll build it for you.
Very true. Yeah, we will create the curriculum for you and we'll help out. We do also have our Facebook, our Instagram, our LinkedIn, where we try to keep things up to date there as well, as far as, classes that we're going to and that we're currently teaching. We try to give you highlights of those classes. We try to keep up with the ever-changing world that is 911 and making sure that people are aware of that.
All right. Well, Tatiana, thank you so much for joining us this week and giving us some things to think about on how to always be tactical dispatchers and to not be afraid when we start to delve into areas we've never been before, because we have the skills to make the decisions to make sure everybody comes home safely.
Correct. You're never going to grow if you don't try.
And from all of us here at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary.
I'm Erica.
And we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911 Podcast, copyright 2025. From all of us at Lifeline, stay safe out there. And until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.